January 26, 1986, the Chicago Bears were on top of the football world, Super Bowl 20 champions, with a dominant 46-10 victory over the New England Patriots. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement. Led by a defense that many still consider the greatest of all time, and legendary running back Walter Payton, the Bears looked unstoppable. At the center of it all was quarterback Jim McMahon. Known for his wild antics and bold personality, McMahon wasn't your typical quarterback, but he was a winner. And in Chicago, that's all that mattered. With one of the most talented teams the NFL had ever seen, it seemed like the Bears were primed to build a dynasty. But as we all know, that's not what happened. What followed was nearly 40 years of frustration, disappointment, and an endless search for one thing: a true franchise quarterback. In fact, since that glorious night in New Orleans, the Chicago Bears have struggled to find even a glimpse of consistency under center. So what went wrong? How did a team that was on top of the world fall into such a long stretch of quarterback futility? Let's go back to where it all began, just one season after that Super Bowl win. Fresh off their Super Bowl victory, the Bears entered the 1986 season with the highest of expectations. How could they not? They had the best defense in football, a talented roster loaded with future Hall of Famers, and a fan base that believed they were at the beginning of a dynasty. And for a while, it seemed like those expectations might be met. The Bears started the season 92, and McMahon was leading the charge once again. But as was the case throughout his career, McMahon's health was always a question mark. He played the game fearlessly, but that style came with a price. Week 12 against their arch rivals, the Green Bay Packers, changed the course of both McMahon's career and the Bears' future. In one of the dirtiest plays in NFL history, Packers defensive end Charles Martin body-slammed McMahon to the turf long after the play was over. The brutal hit resulted in a shoulder injury that ended McMahon's season and effectively his career as a reliable starter. The Bears managed to finish 14-2 behind their dominant defense, but their Super Bowl hopes were dashed when they lost in the divisional round to Washington with Steve Fuller and Doug Flutie under center. McMahon returned in 1987, but he was never the same player. He was constantly battling injuries, playing in just a handful of games each season. His toughness was unquestionable, but his body simply couldn't hold up to the punishment. By the time 1989 rolled around, McMahon's relationship with the Bears' ownership had deteriorated. He clashed with team president Michael McCaskey, and it was clear that McMahon's time in Chicago was coming to an end. That year, he was traded to the San Diego Chargers, making the close of an era that should have been filled with multiple Super Bowls, but instead left fans wondering what might have been. McMahon was gone, but the Bears' problems at quarterback were only just beginning. With McMahon gone, the Bears found themselves in unfamiliar territory without a clear answer at quarterback. The team turned to Jim Harbaugh, a first-round pick in 1987, hoping he could fill the void left by McMahon. Harbaugh had the pedigree and the leadership qualities coaches liked, but translating that to the field was another story. His time in Chicago was a mixed bag filled with occasional promise but marred by inconsistency and frustration. In 1990, Harbaugh led the Bears to an 11-5 record and a playoff berth, but the team's playoff demons followed them as they were knocked out in the divisional round by Bill Parcells' New York Giants, a team that went on to win the Super Bowl. Despite the disappointment, Harbaugh showed enough to retain the starting job, and in 1991, he started all 16 games, something few Bears quarterbacks have done since. Yet even with a defense ranked among the best in the league, Harbaugh struggled to elevate his game. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns, and Chicago's playoff run was again short-lived, this time at the hands of the Dallas Cowboys in a 17-13 loss. Harbaugh's inability to lead the Bears beyond the second round was becoming a recurring theme, and as the losses piled up, so did the pressure on him to perform. By 1992, it was clear that the magic of the 1980s had worn off. The Bears finished 5-11, missing the playoff for the first time since 1983, and head coach Mike Ditka, the man who had been synonymous with Chicago football, was fired. With Ditka gone and Harbaugh leaving for the Indianapolis Colts in 1993, the Bears were back to the drawing board. Once again, they were searching for a quarterback who could finally provide some stability. In 1985, they thought they'd found that answer in Erik Kramer. After spending time as a journeyman backup in Detroit, Kramer arrived in Chicago and immediately made an impact. He threw for a franchise record 3,838 yards and 29 touchdowns in 1995, the best statistical season by a Bears quarterback in the Super Bowl era. For a brief moment, it seemed like the Bears had found their man, but in typical Bears fashion, the success was short-lived. Kramer battled injuries over the next few seasons, and his play declined. By 1998, the Bears were back in familiar territory, without a clear starting quarterback and without a playoff appearance in sight. As the 2000s began, the Bears continued to cycle through quarterbacks without much success. Jim McMahon, a first-round pick in 1999, quickly flamed out, and the team turned to yet another first-round selection in 2003, Rex Grossman. Grossman had all the tools to succeed. He was a tough, strong-armed quarterback with a winner's mentality. But like McMahon before him, Grossman's career was plagued by injuries. He barely played his first 2 seasons due to various ailments, and many fans began to wonder if he would ever be the answer. In 2006, Grossman finally had his shot. He stayed healthy, and the Bears boasted a dominant defense led by Brian Urlacher, as well as an explosive special teams unit featuring Devin Hester, who quickly became the most dangerous returnman in NFL history. The Bears finished their regular season with a 13-3 record, and for the first time since 1985, they found themselves in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 41 was supposed to be Grossman's moment to prove his critics wrong, but instead, it became another chapter in the Bears' quarterback tragedy. Despite a promising start, with Devin Hester returning the opening kickoff for a touchdown, Grossman struggled throughout the game. He threw 2 costly interceptions, including a pick-6 to Colts cornerback Kelvin Hayden, and the Bears lost 29-17 to Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts. Even though Grossman had led the Bears to their first Super Bowl appearance in over 2 decades, his performance was inconsistent at best. The next season, Grossman was benched after a series of poor performances, and by 2008, he was out of Chicago. The Bears once again were left searching for the next quarterback. In 2009, the Bears made a blockbuster move, one that they hoped would finally solve their quarterback problems once and for all. They traded for Jay Cutler, a former Pro Bowler with a rocket arm who had grown frustrated with the Denver Broncos. At the time, the trade was seen as a bold and necessary step. Cutler was everything the Bears needed, a young, talented quarterback with the potential to elevate their offense. Cutler's time in Chicago, however, turned out to be one of the most polarizing eras in franchise history. His first season was rough, throwing a league-high 26 interceptions, but the talent was obvious. In 2010, Cutler led the Bears to an 11-5 record and a spot in the NFC Championship game, where they faced their arch-rivals, the Green Bay Packers. This game was Chicago's golden opportunity. With a Super Bowl berth on the line, fans believed this was the year the Bears would return to the top. But Cutler struggled mightily, completing just 6 passes for 80 yards before leaving the game in the third quarter with a knee injury. Backup quarterback Caleb Haney was unable to mount a comeback, and the Bears lost 21-14. The sight of Cutler on the sidelines, unable to return, became the lasting image of his tenure in Chicago. Questions about his toughness and leadership followed him for the rest of his career. While Cutler remained the Bears' starter for several more seasons, he was never able to lead them back to the playoffs. Despite holding every major Bears passing record, Cutler's inconsistency and injuries defined his time in Chicago. By 2016, after multiple coaching changes and roster overhauls, the Bears decided to move on from Cutler, cutting him after 8 seasons. While his tenure was the longest of any Bears quarterback in the Super Bowl era, it was also marked by missed opportunities and unmet expectations. With Cutler gone, the Bears needed to find their next franchise quarterback, and they wasted no time. In the 2017 NFL Draft, they made a bold move, trading up to the 2nd overall pick to select Mitch Trubisky out of North Carolina. The pick was controversial from the start. Trubisky had only started 13 games in college, and many believed the Bears had passed on more proven talents like Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Trubisky's rookie season was rocky, but the Bears saw enough promise in him to stick with him. In 2018, under new head coach Matt Nagy, Trubisky took a big step forward, throwing for over 3,200 yards and 24 touchdowns while leading the Bears to a 12-4 record and their first NFC North title since 2010. The Bears have the league's top-ranked defense, led by Khalil Mack, and with Trubisky's development, fans believed they had finally found their quarterback. But just like so many Bears quarterbacks before him, Trubisky's playoff run ended in heartbreak. In the wild card round against the Philadelphia Eagles, Trubisky drove the Bears down the field in the final minutes, setting up a game-winning field goal attempt. But Cody Parkey's infamous double doink cost the Bears the game, and their promising season ended in disappointment. The loss seemed to take the wind out of Trubisky's sails. He struggled mightily in 2019, regressing in almost every statistical category. By 2020, the Bears were back in quarterback limbo, alternating between Trubisky and veteran Nick Foles. The team squeaked into the playoffs with an 8-8 record, but was quickly eliminated by the New Orleans Saints. After the season, the Bears decided not to pick up Trubisky's fifth-year option, effectively ending his time in Chicago. In 2021, the Bears once again found themselves in a familiar position, searching for their next quarterback. This time, they traded up in the draft to select Justin Fields, a dual-threat quarterback from Ohio State. Fields had all the physical tools, a big arm, speed, and toughness. He was seen as a prospect with much higher upside than Trubisky, and Bears fans were optimistic that Fields could finally break the team's quarterback curse. However, Fields' rookie season was a struggle. He dealt with poor pass protection, an inconsistent offensive scheme, and injuries that limited his development. Despite showing flashes of brilliance, Fields finished the season with a 2-8 record as a starter, throwing for 1,870 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. In 2022, Fields took a step forward as a runner, leading all quarterbacks in rushing yards with over 1,100. But as a passer, the same issues remained. His completion percentage hovered around 60%, and he continued to struggle with turnovers and taking too many sacks. The Bears finished with a league-worst 3-14 record, and while Fields showed plenty of potential, questions about his ability to succeed as an NFL quarterback persisted. Now, in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Bears selected Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick, giving Chicago a true signature QB. It's a decision that could define the franchise for the next decade. So here we are, nearly 40 years after the Bears' lone Super Bowl victory. The franchise is still searching for its next great quarterback. From Jim McMahon to Rex Grossman, Jay Cutler, Mitch Trubisky, and Justin Fields, the Bears' quarterback carousel keeps spinning, and the results have been heartbreakingly consistent. Before we wrap up, we need to mention Sid Luckman. If you're a younger Bears fan, you've probably only heard the name in passing. He was, by all accounts, the best quarterback the Bears had ever had. The problem is that he retired in 1950, and the Bears haven't had a truly elite quarterback since. Some fans have even dubbed it the Luckman curse, as since Luckman, the Bears have been cursed when it comes to finding a franchise quarterback. And when you look at the long list of failed quarterbacks in Chicago, it's hard to argue against the idea. Whether it's bad luck, poor scouting, or something more mysterious, the Bears just can't seem to get it right. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more NFL history content. And let me know in the comments, will the Bears ever find their franchise quarterback, or are they destined to keep searching?